Hey everyone, Chris here, and I'm coming to you from my bedroom right now to give you a little bit of review about X-Men Days of Future Past, which I just got back from not too long ago. It's about 12:49 right now, which means that the movie let up about close to an hour ago, so it's still pretty fresh in my mind. I wanted to give my impressions on the movie, and I'll make sure that this isn't really as long as the Lego movie, so hopefully there won't be any trouble there. So let me start by saying that I like this movie, and I like the action, I like the plot, but at the same time, well, I also like the character interaction as well, of course. But at the same time, this movie was kind of dumb in the way that they handled some things, but I'll get to that in a little bit. So, the premise, of course, of this movie is the concept of the X-Men and time travel. And that's something that really sort of piqued my interest when I first thought about watching this movie, because I like time travel movies. I like that sort of aspect about going back and messing with the past at the same time, having to deal with the consequences of it in the future. And the X-Men did that, but in a way that I think could have been handled a little bit better. Perhaps would have made for a more interesting movie. So there will be one or two spoilers at the very end, and I'll put a warning up for that, just so you know when it's going to happen. When I'm going to go off on my little mini rant there, but I'll try to keep it contained a little much. So the concept in this movie is that in the future that we don't really specify. We specify it's New York, but we don't specify a year or anything like that. Basically, the apocalypse was happening. It's starting to look like the beginning of the Terminator movies. You know, with the whole blasted landscapes and all that, the ruined cities, and all that fun stuff. So it seems that there's been a war, and the mutants have lost. And it seems that like they have the whole concentration camp. And it actually does have some sort of Nazi imagery right at the very beginning. And this isn't a spoiler or anything, because this is one of the first things you actually see in the movie. Is you see piles of bodies that are just being bulldozed, dumped right into an area. And I think, well, okay, not Nazi imagery much. I mean, it really goes hand in hand with the fact that they're trying to eliminate mutants and anyone who could possibly bring more mutants into the world. So we basically got like the Nazi Reich 2.0 in New York, and some of the mutants led by Charles Xavier, which is played by the always awesome Patrick Stewart. Basically, they're fighting, but they're in this movie. They're discovered by the Sentinels, the robots that seek out and destroy the mutants. And when it seems that all is going badly, after seeing, minor spoiler here, you know, does it really matter, because the whole time travel concept, everything works out in the end. So, Iceman is killed pretty easily in the first one. I don't remember if anyone else was, but oh well. So he's killed. A couple people are killed, and what was it? Shadowcat? No, Blink. I think that was her name in the movie. Blink is killed pretty easily in the early in the movie. But then it's realized, surprise, time travel. We can go back and fix everything, and that's what Kitty Pryde does. Shadowcat in the movie is basically, she has the ability to tap in and send their consciousness back in time. And I'm wondering, could she always do that? I've never seen that sort of ability mentioned even once. I don't remember. It's been a while since I've seen the movies, but I don't remember if they ever elaborated about it. So anyways, they can send people's consciousness, and here we go with the autofocus again. And I'm going to stay as far back as I can so I don't, piss the camera off and make it do that. So it happens once. She makes one of the mutants, I forget his name, but sends him back in time. So to sort of prevent the attack and saying, this location's not safe and all that. And so they're able to relocate somewhere else. And Magneto, who's good by this time, is with Charles, and they're best buddies at this point. Like, they're not trying to kill each other, for once. Get to a monastery in China or something like that. They're able to do that because I guess they're able. The apocalypse is easily traversable as long as you have a functioning aircraft. So they go to China, and they decide that, we got to go back in time to stop it from happening. And so they decide, they elect Wolverine to do it. So he sends them back in time, and basically we have pretty much the sequel to X-Men First Class, and it actually is in the same continuity because you have the same characters, McAvoy and I think it's McAvoy and Michael Fassbender that were Charles Xavier and Magneto in the first movie, and they even carry over one of the lines and that from the one. You remember the scene where Wolverine goes into where they approach Wolverine in the bar?
Excuse me, I'm Eric Lensher.
Charles Xavier.
Go fuck yourself.
Well, they decide to do a cameo of that movie by mentioning that paraphrasing that line in there. So, let me go on to say that I really liked the way the characters interact with one another. I really liked the portrayal of McAvoy and Fassbender in the 70s era of it. And the way that the movie does it is they do parallel timeline. They show us what's going on in the 1970s and what's going on in the year 2000X or something like that. They never specify that sort of thing. And Hugh Jackman is, well, at the time, in the future, he's strapped to a table. But in the past, he's going around doing his own things. And Kitty Pryde says something to the fact is that, oh, you know, that's, pardon me, that when we're doing this, timelines will be running at the same time. And I wondered, well, did that happen before? Or is it just that way? And they specify that none of the changes that you do will take place until you wake up. So they must have done this several times before. Here we go with the autofocus. They must have done this several times before, but it was just an issue for them that they just brought up now in the movie, like something that, well, if Kitty Pryde had this ability to do this, would this not have been important to mention earlier? And at this point, you realize it was strictly for the benefit of the audience. So they really got the atmosphere down for the 1970s. One of the first things that we see going back there is like a lava lamp, and you have like New York, and during the 1970s with Times Square and all that, you have like disco in a Paris nightclub. So they really, really got the nailing down there, especially like the newsreels, how they had the old-fashioned cameras and the film format that they had at the time. That was a nice little extra touch, that attention to detail that I really truthfully enjoyed. So they might as well have called this movie the Wolverine Days of Future Past, because it was he was pretty much the star of this movie, and him, Charles Xavier, and all that. It was like the excuse, like you could have sent anybody into the past, truthfully, but you decided to send Wolverine because apparently it breaks his mind and all that, because Kitty Pryde can't send anyone back that far, otherwise their mind breaks. So it makes me wonder why they couldn't have sent Colossus, because, you know, he is the Man of Steel. He is Rasputin, was it Peter Rasputin or something like that? If they could have sent them, but you send Wolverine because he's pretty much the poster child of the entire franchise. Pretty much the protagonist, and that was their justification for why they decided to send Wolverine and not anybody else. But they managed to get a scene where Charles of the past is able to communicate Charles of the future, of course, taking advantage of the whole time travel sort of thing. And God, this movie is full of time puns, right? All the way through. Like there's even a like a couple times where like the characters say like, oh, something relating to time. Oh, you're late, or you're getting a late start, or we're out of time, something like that. It's okay. It's a little cheesy though, all things considered. So another part of the movie that was important is sort of the appearance of the Sentinels. And the Sentinels is, if you're not familiar with the Marvel Universe, is how we're doing on time. If you're not familiar with the Marvel Universe, are basically the big robot that Magneto generally always had by his side in the comics. And this is sort of like an origin story of where the Sentinels came from, and showing how they're able to adapt in the future to mutant attacks, how they're more powerful, pretty much indestructible, and in the past, like how they originally came about in the first place. So that was good. Like they were exploring the origin story and how it all sort of fit in. Now the part where it gets a little bit dumb is the closer we get to the end and that I'll hold off there for a little bit because I kind of want that to be close to the end of the story. It's the end of this review. A couple things that didn't need to be there, and like some of the characters in the future did not need to be there. I was wondering what their purpose was. I understand that Kitty Pryde was very important in it because she was basically the entire reason why Logan was able to go into past in the first place. So I get that. I understand that. That's perfect. But Colossus, I don't recall him ever speaking. He may have one or two lines, but those might have been off screen. I don't remember him speaking once during the entire film. Halle Berry did not need to be in this movie, in my opinion. That she only had maybe 5 lines in it, and yeah, not all of them were important. Like I think her most memorable line in the movie, and I remember word for word, is when there are a bunch of Sentinels coming at them. Like they say something back, it's like we can't stop them, and Storm basically looks at them and says, "No, but we can slow them down," and that was the highlight of the movie for her. And, she doesn't have any other lines after that, I don't believe. So yeah, you might as well have only had the characters. Maybe you could have kept Kitty Pryde in there. You have Charles, you have Magneto, and you have Logan, and that was pretty much all you really needed to do. But you needed to throw some of the X-Men in there. You had to throw Iceman, you had to throw Sunspot in there. And well, even though my knowledge of X-Men isn't quite as deep as I really want it to be, there's one or two things that I know about it. It's okay. Oh yeah, another thing that I didn't need to be in this movie, at least from my perspective. Not only did Hugh Jackman star in this movie, he also had somebody else who starred in it too. His bodacious buttocks and his associate producer. Yeah, Wolverine's ass is in this movie. It's I didn't need to see it. I didn't even need to see it. But you know what the most damning thing is? I knew it was coming a mile away. It's like the scene here. Like the scene is, he wakes up in the past, and naturally in the past here, if you go through time travel, you usually end up naked. I mean, wonder Terminator call back or call forward or something like that. Anyways, so Wolverine wakes up. The first thing he does, like he's in bed with a woman or something like that, some woman who is never not important enough to be mentioned ever again. So basically, he's in bed and all that. She's wearing a bra and all that, so it's okay. But the minute I see him, the first thing that goes to my mind is you wouldn't do it there. And the scene goes on and on. Oh, don't you dare do it. And there it is. Wolverine's ass. Smiling at me, it's winking at me, it knows my pain. But it was only there for a second, so it wasn't too bad, I guess. I got through it. And I guarantee you it was pretty much only there for like the female audience members because I guess there might have been some guys out there like who were the prospect and go, really? Like just imagine how then they were shooting the scene like Hugh Jackman was there and it's like, yeah, you know what would be better in this scene? You know, if you got my ass there. You know, on camera and all that, you get that out of the way. No, you need to shoot the scene better. You need to have the light source here. You must get the dimples on film. It must be perfect. And that's what eventually happened there. And Mystique was also a big part of this movie as well. And I don't know exactly why Mystique, out of all people, because, I don't know, it would have been more important to focus on Magneto and all that, but the focus of the movie was also having Mystique in there and how her character developed. And she was okay. I was more interested in the relationship between Magneto and Professor X, though. And we saw that going through the movie. We saw that all culminating right up at the very end. So character interactions, very well done. Atmosphere, very well done. Plot, good for the most part. The issue I had with the plot was that nothing was established for us in the very beginning. We realized that there was a war and that everything was dead and there was apocalypse and all that. And we're in New York. They managed to show us all like the places like where we are in the world by showing us like a little location subtitle down there like New York, Moscow, China, Washington D.C. And but I still have no idea what happened. It's like we missed a really good movie where like the apocalypse happened, somewhere between like the Wolverine movie and X-Men Days of Future Past, and I think they really could have explained a little bit more. But at the same time, the ending wasn't really well explained for us. And it left us sort of wondering just what did we miss, and the movie doesn't explain for us. So here's where we're going to get into a little bit of spoilers. And yeah, now if you see the movie, you know how appropriate the sound effect actually really is. And so, man, I'm sorry about that. So, my issue comes with the fact that the time travel itself, how they're able to run parallel and all that. We see at the very beginning how they're able to send one of the mutants into the past by like a couple days or so, and they're able to warn of an attack. And it implies from their dialogue that they do this fairly often whenever they run around. And so I'm wondering that they send Wolverine in the past, and he gets very much has his ass kicked. And during the movie, we see as Magneto slowly becomes more and more unhinged in the 1970s era. It seems to be a possibility that the timeline could even become worse than the previous one. And I'm wondering, well, why don't you just take him out or something like that, or why can't you just go back into the past again? And if you have the ability to sort of mess with the timeline, why don't you just keep on doing it over and over again until things go right? Now, one of the characters, I think Beast's character, states something like how the timeline always must be this way or something like that, but the events of the story shows it's not true, and that things can indeed be changed, and that's another issue that I have, and I'll get to that later again. So it makes me wonder if things went pear-shaped in the past. Why don't you just pull Wolverine out, send him back a couple more days, and then try the process over again? So you could have avoided a whole lot of stuff, but unfortunately, it doesn't make for a very interesting movie. What would have made for a more interesting movie is to have a lot of Quicksilver, because he was a big, large comic relief right when they first arrived in the 70s. He was hilarious in this movie. He was able to go around and basically when they're in the Pentagon looking for Magneto, they're able to he's able to like go around, mess with guards, basically move so fast that he stops time and all that. He's able to do stuff like he makes people punch themselves in the face. He gives security guards wedgies and all that. And I looked at my cousin when we were watching this, and he said, "You know what? We should get a movie about this guy. He's awesome." And you know that is true. Quicksilver was awesome. He was a very funny part of the movie, while at the same time proving he could be extremely useful. I mean, the fact when they were able to break Magneto out, he was able to do like the vibrating thing on like the glass and all that, and that was really cool. That was a good use of his powers. So I'm wondering is where was Quicksilver during all of this? Where was Peter? Like if he has the ability to go and mess with people and all that during the big climax at the end of the movie, why couldn't he have come there? Why couldn't he have been help? I mean, he was that fight could have been over way before it started, and but they did manage to use a slow motion again for some weird reason. Like they were able to, like Charles was able to talk to Mystique before she was able to blow all like a bunch of people away and all that. And from Mystique's perspective, time stopped. But from Charles' perspective, time kept on moving because he's sort of like motioning to Beast while he's doing like the mind meld thing with her. And it's weird because time is supposed to be working parallel according to what Kitty Pryde said, and in the future they're just about to get zapped by the Sentinels. But in the past, Mystique is like in this weird bullet time stop thing, and I wonder how does this mess with the whole parallel concept thing, and yeah, that sort of thing could get better. Now, what I didn't like about this movie is that here once again, pretty much major spoilers at this point. And if you have seen the movie, that's good. But if not, proceed with caution. Here be dragons. This movie basically invalidates pretty much almost every single X-Men movie that came before this. with the ending, in that basically the big reset button has been hit, and the history eraser button has been pressed, and none of the events that happened before really have happened at that point. So, like the X-Men movies before that, the Wolverine movies, totally pointless because it's all out the window, and it's replaced with a new timeline, which once again we have no basis. We don't know what's truly different. All we know is, like, Scott Summers alive. All we know is that Aurora Monroe is alive. That Magneto is doing something. I don't know what he's doing. I don't think they even talked about Magneto there at the very end. And that the world is not doomed. And I have issue with that because it was sort of intended as sort of like a reboot to a universe. And I have issues with that because you have an entire set of movies that were building up to this, and you do this sort of thing that that might not sit well with some people who really like the previous. You just have to stick with it. So this brings up another point that I'm curious about, is that that at the very end, Charles Xavier knows exactly what's happened and all that. So I'm wondering if why hasn't Charles mentioned this sort of thing before? I mean, that the ability to like the idea to go back and pass before this. If Kitty Pryde had the ability to send people back into the past, even on the order of decades, which of course she's completely not confident about, but managed to do so anyway. Like, why didn't Xavier decide to do something before this point? Like, this could have all been avoided if they went to like the most secure location they could have found. Like, even orders before this, like when the war was even happening, like when it was even starting, it could have said that. Oh, you know, you can send people into the past. We can just do that and avoid the whole war. But the way it worked is, I think the director really just wanted us to have a movie in the first place. If we could accomplish this all off screen, then nothing would have, been of any value. So, in the end, the movie was great. I like the movie. The concept of time travel, though, could have been handled better. I can't believe I'm saying this, but they could have taken aspects of the Nicolas Cage movie Next, where the guy is able to jump forward like a couple minutes and sort of able to see whether or not he made a mistake. And if he did make a mistake, he can go back and fix it so that they wouldn't make the mistake again. They really could have done something like that. And they really could have used Quicksilver much more to a better extent. Maybe like the trying to keep him comic relief at the very end. And of course there are the minor nitpicks in the end, like if Magneto was using the Sentinels to sort of blast away at Washington and all that fun stuff. Why didn't the military get involved right away? If people saw that there were gunfire and all that, wouldn't they got the military involved? And Magneto probably couldn't have stopped them, or maybe he could have, considering the stuff of the Days of Future Past. One more gripe. I assume it's like the idea of Charles Xavier, and another spoiler sort of thing, is that Charles Xavier in this movie can walk for a little while, and he can walk because he takes drugs, and these drugs apparently, according to Beast, are the sort of drugs that allows him to control his mutation, basically keeps him from hulking out. Can you imagine, like, if Bruce Banner got a hold of that serum that Beast was doing? I don't know if it would have worked for him, if it did or not. So, he can walk, but when he does walk, he sort of suppresses his powers. So, it makes a convenient sort of divide, a convenient divide for Professor X to either use his powers, or at the same time he sacrifices his powers for the ability to walk, so he's sort of torn between his human and his mutant side. I think that they really tried to make it sort of like a morality, like in the end he realized, oh, you know what, my ability to walk isn't important and stuff like that. Makes me wonder if they could have just fine-tuned the medication so that they could have had a little bit of both. But I guess it's sort of black and white and that sort of thing. So, good movie. Great movie. I recommend going to see it. I don't know how it got a PG-13 rating because some of the deaths were quite violent. And like I said, Iceman getting like his head torn off or something like that. But it's ice, so it's fine. And Colossus getting torn in half, but it's okay. He's made of metal. And Blink being impaled 3 times, but it's okay because there's no blood. Yeah. yeah, Spoonie was right when he did his review and all that. This movie was quite violent indeed. And, but you know what? In the end, it was an okay movie. But the scene at the very end is at the post credit scene is where you basically it's either in the past or the future or the present. I can't tell. Given this movie has a focus on time travel, I assume it's in the past. How the character of Apocalypse is basically playing Rubik's Cube with a pyramid, and basically you have like a group of people doing the same chant in The Dark Knight Rises, and they're all like worshiping Apocalypse. And you see the four horsemen in the background. At first, I thought I was joking how it was a Prometheus 2 trailer. I mean, it would have made sense if Michael Fassbender's in the movie, but that's beside the point. I didn't see Stan Lee. Was he in this movie? I was looking at my cousin and I said to him, you know what, we gotta find Stan Lee, and whether or not it's easy or not, I can't tell. Was he in this movie? I don't even know. I'm probably gonna check TV tropes after this. So that was my 2 cents on it. I was able to cut it down by 10 minutes, under half an hour. And I hope that this was a little bit entertaining, and I hope that you like this sort of review. And yeah, I guess that's just about it. That wraps it up. Good movie. Watch it. Enjoy it. But time travel is stupid. Do it right or not at all. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you guys in the next video. This is Actual, and I'm signing off.